In a faraway galaxy, the battlefield lay silent after the clash of steel and fire had ended. Broken ships floated in the cold darkness, and the ground below was scarred with craters and smoke. Among the wreckage, a human soldier struggled to breathe. His armor was cracked, his body weak, and the blood in his veins felt like fire. His comrades had either been taken or destroyed, and now he was left alone, drifting between life and death. Every breath felt heavy, and the stars above looked distant and uncaring. He thought this was the end, that no one would come for him, and that his story would vanish in silence. Yet, in the shadows of the ruins, a pair of alien eyes watched. The family lived in a small hidden dwelling far from the grand cities of the Empire. They were not warriors, nor rebels, only simple beings who followed the laws that kept them safe. But when the alien father saw the soldier lying among the rubble, he felt a pull in his heart. The human was the enemy, the one their rulers warned against, the one who brought fear to the council. Yet he looked broken, fragile, barely alive. The father hesitated, torn between the law and his own conscience. He knew what the punishment would be if the council discovered their act, death or exile, perhaps worse. Still, he could not walk away. He called for his mate, and together they dragged the soldier into their hidden home, covering his tracks with sand and debris so no one would know he had been taken. The air inside their home was dim and warm. The alien mother knelt beside the soldier, touching the burns on his skin with trembling hands. She whispered words in her own tongue, words of comfort that he could not understand but somehow felt. Their child stood close, wide-eyed and silent, staring at the strange figure lying before them. The human's chest rose and fell slowly, his breaths uneven and shallow. The child felt fear, but also a strange kind of wonder. They had heard stories of humans, of how fierce and unstoppable they were, how even the council feared their anger. Yet here he was, broken like any other living thing, needing kindness. The child looked at their parents, unsure, and asked in a hushed voice, "Why save him? He is not one of us." The father's eyes darkened, heavy with thought. "Because he is alive," he said quietly. "And life, no matter whose it is, must not be thrown away." The mother pressed cool herbs against the soldier's wounds, whispering, "We cannot let him die." The words lingered in the room, a dangerous promise that could destroy them all. Days passed slowly, filled with silence and fear. The family hid the soldier in a small chamber beneath the floor, where the walls were thick and the sound of his breathing could not reach outside. At night, when the world outside was still, the mother crept down with bowls of broth, teaching him slowly to drink again. The father kept watch, always alert for the heavy steps of soldiers who might arrive without warning. Every knock on the door sent chills through their bones, for they knew that discovery meant doom. Still, they continued. The child grew closer to the human, sitting by his side, whispering simple words, and watching as his eyes flickered open more often. The whispers began to spread in the village. Neighbors spoke of strange noises at night, of shadows moving in the home of the quiet family. Some dismissed it as imagination, but others carried the words to soldiers. Patrols began to circle more often, their eyes sharp and questioning. Each time the family heard the clank of armor or the echo of boots, their hearts froze. The father would stand at the door, his hands shaking though his face showed calm, while the soldier hid in darkness below. The mother would grip her child's hand tightly, whispering prayers that the guards would leave. The human's strength returned slowly. He opened his eyes more each day, watching the family with silent confusion. He did not understand why they risked everything for him, but he felt the weight of their sacrifice. When the child offered him water one night, his hand trembled as he accepted it. His voice was weak, but he managed to whisper, "Why?" The child tilted their head, eyes bright with innocence, and replied, "Because we could not watch you die." The soldier closed his eyes, pain mixing with gratitude, and a strange bond formed between them, something stronger than fear or difference. But danger pressed closer each day. The council's agents were known to punish entire households for even small acts of disobedience. One rumor, one careless glance, could mean the end. The father often stood outside at night, staring at the stars, wondering if he had doomed his family. Yet when he returned inside and saw the soldier breathing more steadily, saw the child's quiet smile as they sat beside him, he knew he had made the only choice his heart would allow. The tension grew like a storm waiting to break. The family lived in constant fear, the walls of their home feeling thinner with every passing hour. The human soldier, though weak, could sense their unease. He clenched his fists, frustrated at his helplessness. He wanted to protect them, but he could barely stand. Still, he promised himself that if the time came, he would not let them face punishment for his sake. He owed them more than life itself. And so the days dragged on, heavy with suspense, as the secret of one wounded human became a dangerous truth that could shatter not just a family, but an entire world. The nights grew colder and the silence in the small dwelling became heavier. The alien family knew that every hour they kept the wounded human hidden, the danger around them increased. The father often walked to the edge of the village, pretending to gather food or water, but in truth his eyes scanned the streets for soldiers. He noticed more patrols than before. The Empire's guards walked with suspicion, their questions sharper, their presence heavier. They claimed they were looking for traces of spies and enemies, but deep inside the father knew they were searching for the human. He returned home with his face calm, but inside his heart burned with fear. The mother did not let the fear show to her child. She worked quietly, preparing food in silence, grinding herbs to make medicine for the soldier. At night she would light only the smallest lamp and slip down into the hidden chamber. The human's breathing had grown stronger, though he still trembled when trying to rise. His eyes would follow her every move. He understood little of her words, but the kindness in her hands told him everything. She spoke softly, her voice careful not to rise, whispering, "You must stay silent, for if they hear you, we are all lost." He nodded weakly, his lips too dry to form a reply, but in his eyes shone gratitude mixed with sorrow. The child, however, could not hide their emotions. They were drawn to the human like a moth to a flame. Every day, when the father was gone and the mother busied herself with chores, the child would creep down to the hidden chamber. They would sit near the soldier, staring into his tired face, fascinated by the scars and the strange armor that seemed too heavy for any being to carry. "Are all humans like you?" the child asked once, their voice hushed with curiosity. The human turned his head slowly, his lips curving into the faintest of smiles. "No," he whispered, his voice broken, "I am weaker than most." The child frowned, shaking their head. "But you are alive. That makes you strong." The soldier closed his eyes, the words cutting deep into his heart, words he would not forget. But not everyone in the village looked kindly on the family. A neighbor had begun to notice the shadows that moved in their home when others slept. He had heard muffled sounds, footsteps when no one should be awake. His eyes grew narrow with suspicion. He whispered to another villager, and soon the whispers traveled like smoke. It was said the quiet family was hiding something, perhaps even a traitor. The whispers reached the ears of a patrol commander, who tightened his grip on the search. More soldiers arrived, questioning each household, peering into corners, demanding to know if anyone had seen a stranger. The family felt the noose tightening around them. One evening, as the sky darkened with violet light, the sound of armored boots echoed down the street. The father froze at the doorway, the mother dropped her tools, and the child rushed to the hidden chamber, whispering frantically for the human to stay still. The soldier's eyes flickered with alarm, his body too weak to fight, too weak to run. Above, the door slammed open and 3 soldiers entered. Their voices were sharp, their questions sharp as knives. "We have reports of unusual activity here," one barked. "Strange sounds. Movements at night. What are you hiding?" The father stood tall, though his heart pounded. He forced a smile, his voice steady. "We hide nothing. We are simple folk. Perhaps the wind plays tricks on your ears." The soldiers searched the room with cold eyes, lifting covers, opening cupboards. Each second felt like an eternity. The mother stood frozen, her hands trembling against her apron. The child hid behind her, clutching her clothing, eyes wide with terror. Below the floor, the soldier pressed his body flat, his hand gripping the dirt as if to sink deeper into the earth itself. Every creak of the boards above him felt like thunder, every breath like a shout. He prayed silently, though he had never prayed before. At last, the soldiers found nothing and turned away, though their gazes lingered long enough to leave a mark of doubt. "If we hear more," the commander warned, "we will return. And then you will regret your lies." With heavy steps they departed, the sound of their boots fading into the night. The family stood in silence, the fear in the room so heavy it was hard to breathe. Only when the last echo had vanished did the mother sink to her knees, trembling. The child ran to the hidden door and whispered to the soldier, "It is safe. They are gone." The soldier emerged slowly, his face pale, his eyes filled with guilt. He looked at the family, his lips parting as he struggled to speak. "You risk everything," he rasped. The father's jaw tightened, his voice quiet but firm. "We knew the risk when we chose to save you. Do not waste it." The soldier bowed his head, ashamed and grateful, and for the first time he felt something stir inside him, a promise that he would not let their sacrifice be in vain. But outside the walls of their home, the whispers still grew. The council's net was closing, and the family knew the peace of their secret could not last much longer. The danger was not only near, it was already at their door, waiting for the moment to strike. The sky above the village turned darker each night, filled with the hum of patrol ships and the cold glare of searchlights. The whispers about the quiet family had grown stronger, traveling from one suspicious neighbor to another until they reached the ears of the Empire's officials. In the grand chamber of the council, voices rose in anger. Reports claimed someone had broken the sacred law by aiding an enemy, and such betrayal could not go unpunished. The council members, robed in their authority, leaned forward with grim expressions. One elder slammed his hand against the table, his voice echoing across the hall. "If our citizens begin to protect humans, the empire itself will crumble. Send investigators. Find the truth. Make an example of them." The order was given, and from that moment, the family's fragile safety began to collapse. The next morning, soldiers poured into the village in greater numbers than ever before. Their armor glinted under the pale sun, their boots striking the ground like drums of doom. They marched through streets, knocking on doors, tearing through homes, questioning everyone with sharp eyes and sharper weapons. No corner was left unchecked, no excuse left unchallenged. The villagers trembled, their fear feeding the suspicions of the soldiers. The family knew it was only a matter of time before those armored figures came to their door again. Inside the small dwelling, the air was heavy with dread. The father stood at the window, watching the soldiers move closer with each house they searched. The mother held her child close, her face pale but her voice steady. "We must be strong," she whispered, though her hands trembled. Beneath the floor, the human soldier listened to every sound above, his heart pounding. His strength had returned enough for him to sit upright. Though his body was still weak, he clenched his fists, knowing that if he were found, the family would be destroyed. The guilt inside him burned hotter than his wounds. By afternoon, the sound of heavy boots echoed outside their door. The father's chest tightened, but he forced himself to remain calm. When the knock came, it was loud and demanding. He opened the door slowly to face 3 soldiers, their eyes filled with suspicion. "We have reason to believe you are hiding something," one declared. "We will search your home." The father's lips curled into a polite smile, though sweat gathered at his brow. "You are free to look. We have nothing to hide." His voice was steady, but deep inside his blood felt like ice. The soldiers entered, their eyes scanning every corner, their hands moving objects, lifting blankets, and peering into shadows. The mother kept her child close, her heart hammering so loud she thought they would hear it. Each creak of the floorboards made her flinch, fearing they would stumble upon the hidden chamber. The child pressed their face into her clothes, trying not to cry, but their eyes darted toward the trapdoor, terrified that the secret would be revealed. Down below, the human soldier held his breath, his body pressed against the cold wall. Every sound was magnified, the scrape of boots, the slam of cupboards, the muffled voices. His throat ached with the need to breathe, but he forced himself to remain silent. He thought of the family, of the child's innocent eyes, of the mother's gentle hands. He could not let them pay for his life. His hand gripped the knife they had hidden for him, and though his strength was weak, he prepared himself for the worst. If soldiers came through the trapdoor, he would fight, even if it cost him his last breath. One soldier paused in the middle of the room, his eyes narrowing. He tapped his foot on the floor, listening for hollow sounds. The family froze, their hearts thundering in unison. The soldier bent down, his hand brushing over the boards, his gaze sharp as a blade. The child suddenly stepped forward, tugging at his cloak with trembling hands. "Please, sir," the child said softly, their voice shaking but desperate. "You will find nothing here. We are poor, and we are tired. Please do not take our home apart." The soldier looked at the child with narrowed eyes. For a long moment, silence filled the room, heavy as stone. Then he scoffed, straightening, and muttered, "Pitiful." He turned away, leaving the trapdoor untouched. The family nearly collapsed with relief as the soldiers walked out, but their leader turned back at the door. His gaze lingered on the father, sharp and distrustful. "The council will not stop until we uncover the truth. If you are hiding anything, it will not remain hidden for long." His words hung in the air like a death sentence as they left. When the door closed, the family finally let out the breath they had been holding. The mother sank to her knees, tears sliding down her face. The father clenched his fists, rage and fear warring inside him. The child hurried to the hidden chamber, lifting the door just enough to whisper, "They are gone, but they will return." The soldier looked up at them, his eyes filled with guilt so heavy it felt like chains. "I am a curse upon you," he whispered hoarsely. "You should have let me die." The child shook their head fiercely, their eyes wet with tears. "No. You are alive because we chose it. Do not speak of death again." The father stepped forward, his voice quiet but strong. "Listen, human. The council knows something is here. They will not stop until they find you. If they return, there may be nothing we can do. But remember this, we saved you not for reward, not for power, but because it was right. Whatever comes, do not forget that." The soldier bowed his head, his heart heavy with both sorrow and gratitude. He realized then that their courage was greater than any weapon he had ever seen, and that their kindness was more dangerous than their laws could allow. Outside, the soldiers continued their search, spreading fear through the village. The council's shadow loomed larger each day, and the family knew their time was running short. The secret they carried was like fire in their hands, warming their hearts, but threatening to burn them alive. The tension only grew, as the world around them inched closer to discovering the dangerous truth that could change everything. Far beyond the quiet village, in the endless black of space, something stirred. Hidden among the stars, massive warships floated in silence, their engines dimmed, their weapons locked in waiting. These were not ships of the council, nor of the empire that ruled with fear. They were human ships, steel-gray giants that carried the flag of Earth. For weeks they had searched the void for the faint signal of their missing soldier, and now, after following broken transmissions and scattered whispers, they had found a trace. A heartbeat. Weak, fading, but human. And to humans, that was enough. On the command deck of the largest vessel, screens glowed with the faint signature of life buried deep on the alien world. Officers studied the readings, their faces hard with resolve. The commander stood at the center, silent, his eyes fixed on the screen. One life, yet for them, it was worth an entire fleet. "He is alive," the officer finally said. "Barely, but alive." The commander's jaw tightened, and his voice carried through the chamber. "Then we will not leave him behind. Prepare the fleet. Wait for my word. We must know who sheltered him, and who threatened him." Around him, the crew straightened, their eyes burning with loyalty. Humanity had been underestimated for centuries, but every soldier on those ships knew the truth. No human was ever abandoned. Back on the ground, the alien family struggled to keep the human hidden. Each day the patrols grew more aggressive, tearing apart homes and dragging villagers into the streets for questioning. The sound of boots and the shimmer of armor had become a daily nightmare. Inside their small dwelling, the family spoke little, their words heavy with fear. The mother worked endlessly to heal the human's wounds, pressing herbs against his skin, feeding him broth even when her own hands shook. The father kept watch through the cracks of their walls, memorizing the movements of patrols, counting the hours of quiet. The child stayed close to the soldier, whispering soft words to ease his loneliness. But the soldier could feel the growing danger. He had regained some of his strength, enough to stand with help, enough to see the world beyond his hiding place. He looked at the family and felt a sharp pain in his chest, not from his wounds, but from the guilt that weighed on him. He knew that if the council discovered the truth, they would destroy this family without hesitation. One night, when the stars shone faintly through the cracks, he whispered to the father, "You risk everything. Your life, your family. Why do you not turn me in?" The father looked at him, his eyes calm though his face was lined with fear. "Because if we turn you in, we lose more than our lives. We lose our souls. The council cannot take that from us." The soldier closed his eyes, ashamed and humbled. Above the planet, the human fleet moved closer, still hidden, still silent. Their ships were shadows against the stars, waiting for the order. Scouts sent down silent probes, gathering images of the villages, mapping the movement of soldiers, and confirming what the signals had told them. In one small dwelling, they saw the truth: the human soldier, alive but weak, surrounded by an alien family who risked everything to keep him safe. The images reached the commander, and for a moment silence filled the bridge. Finally, the commander spoke, his voice filled with both pride and fury. "They saved one of ours. They broke their own laws to protect him. The council threatens them. Then hear this: if harm comes to that family, if they suffer for their kindness, we will answer. And the galaxy will never forget our answer." Down in the village, the tension reached its breaking point. The council sent investigators, high-ranking officials dressed in heavy robes, their faces cold and merciless. They gathered the villagers in the square, demanding to know who had broken the law, who had aided the enemy. Fear rippled through the crowd, whispers echoing like a storm. The family stood among them, silent, trying to appear small and unnoticed, but the child's hand shook in the mother's grasp. The human soldier hid beneath the floor, listening to the sharp voices above, his heart pounding in rage and helplessness. One official raised his hand and declared, "We know the truth is here. We will search every home until we find the traitors. And when we do, their punishment will be seen by all." The villagers bowed their heads, terrified. Soldiers moved out in formation, beginning the searches once again, their boots striking like thunder. The family returned to their home in silence, every step heavier than the last. The father bolted the door and whispered, "They are closer now than ever. Tomorrow, they will return, and I fear they will find you." The soldier clenched his fists, standing despite his weakness. "Then I must leave. I will not be the cause of your death." But the mother shook her head fiercely, tears burning in her eyes. "You cannot survive outside. They will catch you in an hour. Here, at least, we can protect you. Here, you are not alone." That night, as the world outside grew quiet, the stars above shimmered faintly with the arrival of something greater. The human fleet edged closer to the planet, their engines humming with restrained power. Inside their ships, soldiers prepared for descent, weapons primed but orders held. The commander stood at the viewport, watching the alien world. His voice was a whisper, but every officer on the bridge heard it. "One life is reason enough. One family is worth an entire fleet. Let the council test us, if they dare." And so the storm gathered, unseen but unstoppable. On the ground, the family clung to hope, unaware of the colossal shadows moving above their sky. The soldier lay awake, listening to the whispers of the child beside him, feeling both sorrow and strength. For in his heart, he knew something was coming. Humanity was not far, and when they arrived, the galaxy itself would tremble. The morning came heavy with grey clouds, and the village awoke to the sound of armored carriers grinding across the earth. Dust filled the air as soldiers marched in greater numbers than before, their banners flying high, their weapons glinting like cold fire. The council's investigators had returned, not just to search, but to capture. Their voices boomed through the streets, ordering every family to remain outside while their homes were torn apart. Fear swept through the villages like a flood. Mothers clutched their children, fathers lowered their heads, and no one dared to speak. The family that had hidden the human soldier stood silently among the crowd, their hearts pounding in unison. The mother's hands shook as she gripped the child tightly. The father's jaw clenched so hard it ached, and beneath the floorboards of their home, the soldier waited, knowing the time he had dreaded was about to come. The soldiers stormed into houses, overturning furniture, smashing containers, pulling up floorboards with iron tools. Screams echoed as families begged for mercy, but the investigators had no pity. Their orders were clear: find the human, punish the traitors. When they reached the family's home, the air seemed to freeze. The commander of the search party stepped inside, his cold eyes sweeping across the room. His boots struck the floor with deliberate force as he moved toward the center of the dwelling. The mother tried to remain still, the child tried not to breathe, but the father felt the weight of doom pressing against his chest. The commander paused, his gaze fixed on a small mark near the floor, a crack that should not have been there. He raised his hand, and two soldiers rushed forward, dropping to their knees, prying at the boards with metal tools. The sound of wood splintering filled the room like thunder. The hidden chamber below shuddered as light poured through the broken planks. The human soldier shielded his eyes, his heart racing. He had known this moment would come, but the fear of it was sharper than any wound. With a violent crack, the trapdoor was torn open. Soldiers peered down into the darkness, and their faces twisted into grim satisfaction. "Here," one growled, reaching down. Rough hands dragged the human out, his body weak but defiant. The villagers gasped as they saw him, a real human, the figure from stories and warnings, bruised but alive. The child cried out, trying to reach him, but the mother held them back, tears streaming down her face. The father stepped forward, his voice desperate but firm. "Stop. He did nothing. His words were cut short as a soldier struck him across the face, sending him sprawling to the ground. Chains clinked as they bound the human's wrists, pulling him upright for all to see. The commander turned to the crowd, his voice loud and cruel. "Here is your proof. This family betrayed the empire, hiding the enemy in their home. They chose a human over their own people. For this, they will face judgment before the council." Murmurs rippled through the villages. Some stared in shock, others in silent pity, but none dared to speak against the soldiers. The human soldier, though weak, lifted his head. His voice cracked but carried across the square. "No, they are not traitors. They saved me. They gave me life when no one else would." His words silenced the crowd, his defiance burning through his weakness. The commander sneered, striking him hard across the face. "Be silent. Your words mean nothing here." But they did not silence the villagers' thoughts. Whispers spread quickly, about the family's courage, about the human's loyalty. Some looked at the family not with suspicion, but with awe. Even in chains, even in weakness, the soldier's voice carried weight. As soldiers dragged the human toward the waiting carrier, the child broke free from the mother's arms and ran after him. "No! Please!" the child cried, their voice breaking. A soldier moved to strike them, but the human turned sharply, his body fueled by a sudden burst of strength, pulling against his chains to shield the child with his own body. The blow landed on him instead, and pain shot through his ribs, but he stood firm. The crowd gasped at the sight, an enemy, protecting one of their own. The commander's fury deepened, but before he could order more punishment, the air above them trembled. The villagers looked up, their eyes widening. The sky shimmered with strange light, the clouds splitting apart as colossal shadows moved through the heavens. The first to appear was a massive silhouette, larger than any council ship, its surface gleaming with steel and power. Then another followed, and another, until the sky itself was covered with giants. Engines hummed like distant thunder, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. The commander froze, his voice caught in his throat, as the villagers whispered in terror. What is that? Who are they? The human soldier lifted his head, blood trailing from his lip, and a faint, broken smile formed on his face. He knew. Humanity had arrived. Their ships moved into formation above the planet, silent but menacing, their weapons locked, their presence undeniable. Communication channels across the Empire crackled with alarm, officers shouting reports of an invasion force beyond anything they had expected. But this was no conquest, it was a rescue. The commander barked orders for the soldiers to retreat with their prisoner, but his words lacked their usual sharpness. Fear laced his tone, for he knew what this meant. Humanity had come back, not with one ship, but with an armada. They had come for their soldier. They had come for justice. And as the villagers stared at the burning sky above them, a single thought echoed in their hearts: the galaxy would never be the same. Above the planet, the human fleet spread across the sky like a wall of steel, their vast hulls reflecting the dim light of the sun. Thousands of villagers stared upward, frozen in awe and terror. These ships were not like the Council's vessels. They were heavier, darker, and carried a presence that pressed down on every heart. The air itself seemed to vibrate with their power. Soldiers who had once marched with pride now shifted uneasily, their hands trembling on their weapons. Even the commander, who had shouted orders moments before, stood silent, his face pale as he watched the giants blot out the heavens. Inside one of the great ships, the human commander stood at the center of the bridge. His eyes were hard, his jaw clenched, and his voice, when he spoke, was steady as stone. Open the channel. Let every city, every village, and the council itself hear us. His officers moved quickly, their fingers racing over controls. Soon, every screen across the Empire flickered, every communicator crackled to life, and a deep, steady voice filled the air. This is the Terran fleet. We know of the soldier you captured. We know of the family who sheltered him. And we know of the cruelty you call law. Hear this clearly. Harm one who showed mercy to us, and we will answer with force that you cannot imagine. The words rolled across the land like thunder. Villagers fell to their knees in shock. Soldiers looked at one another with wide eyes, and the council chambers, far away, erupted in chaos as the transmission reached them. The commander's voice carried no anger, no shouting, only a calm certainty that chilled the soul. To us, one life matters. One life is reason enough for all our ships to stand here. We are not here to conquer. We are here because compassion was shown. And if you punish compassion, then you make yourselves enemies of all humanity. Down in the village square, the bound soldier lifted his head. A light sparked in his tired eyes as he listened to the voice of his people. His lips trembled with pride. The alien family, standing among the crowd, stared at the sky with tears glistening in their eyes. For the first time, they realized the scale of what their small act of kindness had done. They had saved a man, and in return, humanity had come to save them. The commander of the patrol shouted for silence, trying to regain control, but his voice cracked. The villagers no longer looked at him with fear. They looked at the sky. Even the soldiers hesitated, their loyalty shaken by the sheer power above. The mother gripped her child's hand, whispering, "They came for him. They came for all of us." The father stood tall, though fear still clung to him, and said quietly, "This is the price of kindness, and also its reward." Suddenly, the human fleet moved. A single warship descended lower, its engines glowing like fire, shaking the ground with its presence. A beam of light shot down, not as a weapon, but as a message of dominance. The alien commander stumbled back, his words faltering. He had led countless raids, shouted countless orders, but never before had he faced a power so overwhelming that his own courage abandoned him. From the beam of light, a new voice boomed, louder and sharper. It was the fleet's second officer, delivering humanity's judgment. "Release our soldier. Release the family who saved him. You will not touch them again. Do this, or we will break your council into dust. We do not ask. We command." Gasps rose from the villagers. Never had they heard such defiance, such certainty. The human voice carried no doubt, no weakness, only the weight of unshakable resolve. The bound soldier looked at the commander holding his chains and whispered, "Now you see. To us, one life is worth all the ships in the sky. That is what it means to be human." The commander of the patrol trembled, sweat dripping down his temples. His soldiers looked to him for orders, but he said nothing. His mind raced. If he resisted, his troops would die in seconds. If he obeyed, the council would condemn him. He was trapped between two unstoppable forces. But as he stared at the massive ship above, its shadow stretching across the land, he realized one truth. The council could not save him from what hovered in the sky. Only obedience might. The silence in the square grew unbearable, broken only by the faint hum of the ships. Then, with a shaky hand, the commander ordered the chains removed. Metal clinked as they fell to the ground, and the soldier staggered forward, free at last. The villagers erupted in whispers, some in shock, others in relief. The alien child ran to him, clutching his hand tightly, as if afraid he would vanish. The mother and father held each other, tears streaming down their faces. Above, the human fleet remained steady, their weapons still ready, their presence a constant reminder. The commander's voice returned one last time, carried across the skies. "This day will not be forgotten. You threatened kindness, and in doing so, you invited us. Know this truth, and let it echo in your council. Humanity will always return, for one, for all." The village stood frozen, the fear of the empire replaced with something new. The awe of a species that would move heaven and earth for even a single life. The council's grip cracked that day, not because of war, but because of compassion. And as the shadows of the human fleet loomed above, the galaxy itself began to tremble. The square stood in stunned silence after the chains dropped. The human soldier was free, though weak, and the family who had sheltered him clung to one another as if afraid that at any moment the soldiers might seize them again. Above, the human fleet remained in formation, colossal shadows blotting out the sky, their engines humming like the heartbeat of giants. Every villager felt it, a weight pressing on their souls. Power so absolute that even the mighty council suddenly seemed small. The patrol commander stood rigid, sweat running down his face. His soldiers shifted uneasily, their weapons still in their hands but they were broken. No one dared to raise a weapon toward the soldier now. The council's voice, carried through a communicator on the commander's wrist, crackled with fury. "Hold them. Do not obey the humans. Arrest the family and the traitor." The villagers heard it, the order dripping with rage and fear, but the commander's eyes stayed fixed on the sky. He could hear the fleet's engines, could see the fire glowing along the edges of their hulls. If he obeyed the council, he and his soldiers would be ashes within seconds. He clenched his fists, torn between his ruler's command and the terror looming above. Finally, his knees weakened, and he bowed his head. His silence was his answer. The human fleet seized the moment. A booming voice filled the square once more, clear and unshakable. "Your council calls them traitors. We call them saviors. This family gave mercy when your empire gave none. They will not be punished. They will be honored." The villagers gasped, turning to look at the family with wide eyes. The mother's tears streamed down her cheeks, the father's shoulders sagged with relief, and the child pressed close to the soldier's hand, their small face lit with a mixture of fear and pride. For the first time, they were no longer just ordinary villagers. They were at the center of a story that would shake the galaxy. The council, desperate to maintain control, sent orders across the empire, commanding fleets to mobilize. But it was too late. Every commander who received the order hesitated, staring at the scale of the Terran fleet gathered in orbit. No alien force had ever seen humanity's full strength, and now it hovered above them, silent but ready to strike. To resist would be suicide. To comply meant betraying the council. Entire armies began to fracture in their loyalty, whispers spreading among soldiers. If humans bring such power for one life, what would they do for war? In the square, the villagers began to murmur as well. Some whispered in awe, others in fear, but none could deny what they saw. The family who had been accused of betrayal now stood as symbols of courage. Even neighbors who had once whispered against them now looked with admiration, ashamed of their doubts. One old villager fell to his knees before them, bowing his head. "You saved him," he said softly, "and for that, they saved all of us." His words spread like a spark. Others lowered their heads, not to the council soldiers, but to the family and the human who had stood in chains. The patrol commander felt his power crumbling. He tried to shout at the crowd, but his words fell flat. His soldiers, seeing the tide turn, lowered their weapons one by one. Some dropped them completely, unwilling to fight against a force that even the council feared. The commander's face twisted in despair. His authority, once absolute, had evaporated in moments. He realized that even if he lived, the council would abandon him for failing. He was trapped in his own fear, a broken man watching his world unravel. The human soldier, still weak, looked around the square with steady eyes. He raised his voice, not strong but filled with resolve. "You called them traitors. I call them family. They risked all for me, and humanity has come because of them. If you punish them, then you declare war not on me, but on all of Earth." His words rang out, carried by the silence of the crowd, sinking into every heart. The villagers whispered, then shouted in agreement, their voices growing louder, no longer afraid. The square echoed with cries of defiance, not against the humans, but against the council. Above, the human fleet remained motionless, watching, waiting. Their silence was more powerful than any weapon, for everyone knew that at a single word, fire could rain down and erase the entire empire. The council, far away, raged and panicked, but their grip had slipped. No order could silence the truth that had spread. The galaxy had seen it now. One human life was enough to summon a storm of steel, and one act of kindness was enough to break the council's chains. The alien family stood together, trembling but unbroken. The mother's eyes were wet with tears. The father's voice cracked as he whispered, "We are alive. We are still alive." The child clung to the soldier's arm, looking at him with pride. The villager's eyes, once filled with suspicion, now shone with respect. The judgment had turned, and with it, the balance of power. That day, the council lost more than authority. They lost their fear's hold over the people. The galaxy had witnessed something greater than power. It had seen humanity's loyalty, and it was terrifying. The village square had never felt so still. The crowd, the soldiers, the family, all stood frozen under the shadow of the colossal ships above. The human fleet lingered silently in the sky, their presence alone heavier than any weapon. For a long moment, no one dared to move. The council's voice crackled faintly from the patrol commander's communicator, still ordering defiance, but the words carried no weight anymore. Even the commander's own soldiers refused to obey, their weapons lowered, their eyes darting nervously toward the heavens. The old balance of power had crumbled, and everyone knew it. The silence broke when a single beam of light descended from the largest ship, bathing the square in a silver glow. It wasn't a weapon, it was a bridge. The villagers gasped as figures appeared within the beam, tall and armored in black steel, the insignia of Earth burning bright on their chests. They marched with precision, their movements sharp, their faces hard. Every step echoed with authority, every motion a reminder that these were warriors who had crossed galaxies for one of their own. The ground seemed to shake beneath their boots as they approached. The lead officer stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "We are here for our brother, and for the ones who gave him shelter." His words, though simple, sent a wave of shivers across the crowd. He turned to the human soldier, still weak but free, and raised his arm in salute. "You are no longer alone. You are home." The soldier's eyes burned with tears he had fought to hold back. He tried to stand tall, but his body wavered, and the child beside him clutched his hand tightly to steady him. The officer knelt briefly, meeting the child's eyes, his hardened expression softening. "You are brave," he said quietly, "braver than many who call themselves soldiers." The child blinked in awe, the words carving into their heart forever. Then the officer's gaze shifted to the family, the mother, the father, trembling but unbroken. He bowed his head slightly, an act of respect so rare that the villagers gasped again. "You defied your empire to protect life. Humanity will not forget this. From this day, you are under our protection." The mother covered her face with her hands, sobbing, while the father straightened his back, pride shining through his fear. The villagers murmured among themselves, their eyes wide with wonder. For the first time, they realized that compassion had greater power than any council decree. The patrol commander, cornered and powerless, tried one last desperate attempt. "You have no right to interfere," he shouted, though his voice cracked. "This is our law, our empire. You cannot." His words cut off as the officer's hand rose. A human warship above shifted, its cannons glowing faintly, a silent warning that chilled everyone's blood. The officer spoke, his tone like steel. "Your laws mean nothing when they punish mercy. Your empire's power ends where humanity begins." The commander stumbled back, his courage shattered, and fell silent. His soldiers looked away, unwilling to defend him. The human soldier, his voice hoarse but steady, spoke then, his words carrying across the square. "They call kindness a crime. They call compassion betrayal. But these people," he pointed to the family, "showed more courage than all your armies. And for that, humanity stands with them." His words struck deep into the hearts of the villagers. Whispers spread quickly, louder than before, no longer whispers of fear but of defiance. The old order was breaking in real time. The officer lifted his hand, and in a flash of light, a transport descended from the fleet. Soldiers carefully helped the human up the ramp, supporting his weak body. The child tried to hold on to him, unwilling to let go, until the mother gently pulled them back. Tears streamed down the child's face, but the soldier knelt briefly, his chains gone, his hand brushing their cheek. "You saved me when no one else would. I will never forget you. Humanity will never forget you." The child nodded fiercely, their small chest heaving with pride. The beam of light widened, enveloping the family as well. Gasps echoed from the crowd. "No!" someone cried. "They are taking them." But it was not a capture, it was a rescue. Slowly, the family rose within the light, lifted toward the safety of the Terran ship. The villagers watched, their eyes filled with awe. Some bowed their heads, others reached their hands upward, as if trying to grasp the meaning of what they saw. A family who had been condemned now rose as symbols of defiance and hope. From above, the commander of the fleet gave the final words, his voice resonating across every communicator, every channel, every corner of the empire. "Let the galaxy remember this. One act of kindness changed everything. You tried to punish mercy, and you called it weakness. But to humanity, mercy is strength. We came for one life, and because of that, we will always come for all." The villagers fell silent, their hearts trembling with the weight of those words. The council, far away in their grand chambers, raged in fury, but their fear was greater than their anger. They knew the truth. Their empire had been challenged not with conquest, but with compassion, and they had lost. As the human fleet turned, carrying the soldier and the family into the stars, the people of the village looked to the sky with new eyes. They had seen what loyalty meant. They had seen what humanity would do for even a single life. And from that day, whispers spread across the galaxy, not of fear of the council, but of awe of the humans. The galaxy trembled, not because of war, but because mercy had revealed a force more unstoppable than any empire. And in the hearts of all who watched, one truth burned forever. Never again would humanity be underestimated.